accountant. So what would I do differently if I was doing this all over again? So number one is instead of dealing, well, one, instead of trying to install myself or trying to deal with employees, I would go directly to subs. By far, best decision I've ever made. The reason for that, I've talked about in other videos, is one, if you're trying to hire and train employees, you have to train them, you have to babysit them, everything else. And whereas subcontractor, they pretty much, for the most part, know what the hell they're doing. They have the insurance. Along with that, there's no upfront cost, right? They have their own truck, trailer, equipment. Literally, the only thing you need to do is give them jobs, right? Now, the thing that speaking of subcontractors, when hiring, I wish I would have done a better job hiring. As far as the paperwork and stuff like that, I wasn't doing the proper paperwork. Didn't know any better. I was expecting my payroll company to actually tell me what was required when hiring employees. Like that's their job. They deal with payroll. Like I would feel like that's connected, but apparently not. So I didn't have the proper paperwork. Got the right information that they needed from the paperwork, but for the W-4 stuff like that, I wasn't doing right. That I would have done differently. The other thing is that I wish I would have started charging more, right? So in the beginning, you don't feel as though, or I didn't feel as though I could charge as much as these bigger companies, and I thought like these bigger companies were ripping off their customers, but in reality, like you need a decent amount of profit in order to sustain the business. Because at the end of the day, like if you like just say you offer a 5-year labor warranty, but the way you price everything, especially with the upcoming recession and everything else, like what happens if you go out of business like 2 years in 2 years? Like you're kind of shortchanging your customers, right? Along with that, when you're not charging enough, what ends up happening, speaking of shortchanging your customers, you're not able to have the infrastructure in place. You're not able to like if you're still installing, so you have to deal with your trucks and trailer and equipment and stuff. Well, if you're not making enough profit, well, then you're not able to upkeep the vehicles properly, or hopefully you're paying the correct insurance, like that kind of thing. But if you're not making enough money, like more than likely you're going to try to skimp by on different things. And if you got like a really old pickup truck that keeps on falling apart and breaking down and everything else, well, you're doing a disservice to your customer because you told them you would be out Monday, but then you call them Monday and you're like, hey, my truck broke down, right? So there's that. And then also the proper equipment, because at the end of the day, like we just went through it today. So we started supplying materials to our subcontractors, and so my one sub actually helps. He delivers the materials for us to our job sites and then for his job sites as well. But today alone, like he sent his guy with the first trailer he ever bought, and it's not bad, like dual axle and that kind of thing, but it's got a ramp. And long story short, this ramp we end up having to take off, and like what should have been a 5-minute process of loading it up with the forklift onto the trailer, strapping it down and going, like we were there for like 3 people, an hour and like 15 minutes, because we had to deal with taking off the ramp and trying to figure out different ways to get this material on the trailer. It was just a big pain in the ass. So then he's not losing money, but he's not making the money he wants to. And it's delaying the other stuff that his driver needs to get done. It's taking my time up. And then on top of that, I have to pay my warehouse employee to help deal with this shit. And it was just a big mess. So, charging more and on employees. Those are two major things. And then after that, it's really like knowing exactly what you should be doing for paperwork, reporting, like that kind of stuff, like kind of like the admin stuff behind that. And because like I'm going through an audit now, and there's so many things that should have been done that weren't done, just through record keeping or hiring the employees or for the subcontractors and stuff like that. And like I just didn't wasn't doing it. Like I just didn't know any better, and I feel like when you hire someone, like whether it's for the payroll company, an accountant, or whoever it is, you can't just assume that they're going to make sure you're doing everything you're supposed to do. Like they only look at the work that they're supposed to be doing, and literally that's it. And then because of that, like like I said, with the payroll company, I've dealt with two different accountants now. And then the payroll company, and like the first accountant, this is where I got into some trouble, is because they did not, like, he was horrible. Like, looking back now, like, he didn't do shit. Like, he literally just asked me some information, and like it almost seemed like he was making up the books and then like match up, and it was a big mess. And then I really do feel as though my current accountant, like, they should have done an audit of my business, of like, okay, this is like, you should have this, and this. When you hire employees, you should be doing this, and this, and all, the proper paperwork, documentation, all that kind of stuff. And like, they didn't do it right. And a lot of the questions and stuff we're going through now could have been alleviated with having that free audit when you take on a new customer. But they didn't do it right. So now what's happening is, like, we're only getting just started into this audit, and I've already paid them $3,500. Like, at this point, I feel like my audit is going to be less expensive than my accountant. Like, I feel like I'm gonna have $10,000 in audit fees at this point, like, for my accountant fees. Like, it's crazy. So I wish I would have done that. And so just assuming people know, like, are gonna have your best interest, and they don't, like, and I know why, because like my accountant is actually like a family friend, and like she's really good at what she does. But I also, like, she does everything pretty much on her own, and she's like maxed out time wise. So I understand why she's not like being as diligent as I would have liked her to be, but it's also for a different type of person. So that's the next thing I'll be probably bringing in, is more of like a bookkeeper, something like that. And talking about Alex Hormozy, like, I talk about him all the time, but he talks about, basically there's three or four different areas of the business. You have acquisition, so that's like the leads coming in, selling the jobs, coming, like, shit like that. For me, I talk about three. It's actually three areas. So you have to have the leads coming in, you have to sell the leads, you have to produce the jobs. Oh, sorry, fourth thing, and like knowing your numbers. But it's really like the admin work to make sure, the way he explains it, is people, like, having someone in there to keep the other two people, well, in my case it would be three people, like, out of jail. Like, he's joking around about it, but it's to make sure everything's on the up and up, so that way you don't go through this and you go through all the process and you're like, I don't know, like, I didn't know I had to do all this shit. So anyway, hope it helps. Talk to you soon.